If you walked near 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue today, you would not see a clean, proud symbol of American power. You would see something that looks like a work site that got abandoned overnight. You would see torn up ground. You would see a wide pit filled with wet dirt, where a key part of the White House complex used to be. You would see tall cranes standing still, like they're waiting for something that may never come. And then there's the sound that people say feels the most unsettling. Nothing. Because as of 8 a.m. this morning, Monday, January 26, 2026, reports indicate all work has been ordered to stop on President Trump's highly disputed plan for a $400 million grand ballroom at the White House. The project critics have mocked as a ballroom from hell is now, at least for the moment, frozen in place, half destroyed, half built, and fully exposed. Sources indicate the order came from a federal judge, described as a Reagan-era appointee, who issued a harsh, detailed injunction that doesn't just pause construction. It also paints a picture of a project allegedly pushed forward with shaky promises, unclear funding, and a legal strategy the court now appears to reject. And this development lands at a brutal time for Trump, because analysts believe he is already dealing with multiple political and financial pressures, from international embarrassment to market fear to mounting legal headaches tied to his business world. But now, the shock is happening at the one place that is supposed to be the safest, most controlled space in his life, his own home base. According to reports, instead of waking up to another day of progress on what he reportedly wanted to be a major legacy project, he woke up to the legal system slamming the brakes, right in the middle of the mess. So in this special breaking report, we're going to walk through what the order reportedly says, why the judge moved now, what happened to the money that was supposed to fund it, and why this stalled-out crater could become the most damaging image of Trump's second term so far. Because the story here is not just a building, it's the symbol, a leader who wanted a monument and may have created a hole he can't escape. To understand why Washington insiders are reportedly stunned today, we have to go back to late 2025. Not long after returning to office, President Trump announced what he described as a major upgrade to the White House. He reportedly argued that the current spaces used for big events were not good enough for the kind of image he wanted to project. Sources suggest he privately complained that parts of the White House were outdated, too small, and embarrassing for major world leaders. His answer, a massive new structure. A proposed ballroom so large it would compete with the grand halls seen in European palaces. Reports suggest it was designed to be huge, tens of thousands of square feet, with extreme luxury features, tall ceilings, flashy details, and a special balcony that would serve as a bold visual statement. But the cost was staggering, $400 million. And Trump's team knew the public would explode if taxpayers were forced to pay for it. So the plan, as it was sold, relied on one key message. The public won't pay. The White House, according to reports, suggested wealthy private donors would cover the full cost. A gift, they said. A patriotic donation, no bill for average Americans. But there was a catch, one that preservation groups immediately focused on. To build the ballroom the way Trump wanted, reports indicate the project would require destroying major parts of the existing East Wing area. That meant ripping out historic spaces, shifting long-standing functions, and tearing up sections tied to the modern working life of the White House. And that's when the backlash turned nuclear. Groups focused on historic preservation moved fast. They argued that the White House is not a personal property. It belongs to the public, and it represents national history. They insisted you can't simply bulldoze parts of it because a president wants a bigger event space. And yet, despite all the warnings, demolition reportedly moved forward. How did they get permission? According to reports, the administration leaned on a powerful argument: national security. They claimed that the new construction would include upgraded secure spaces underground, possibly tied to continuity of government needs, something that could be framed as more than a luxury project, and sources indicate this framing helped the administration push past some of the normal roadblocks, at least at first. The judge overseeing early challenges reportedly allowed demolition to begin, but under strict rules, and those rules mattered. Because the basic deal, according to the reporting, was simple. You can start tearing down what exists, but you cannot truly begin building the replacement until key approvals are in place and the money is secured. And this is where the gamble happened. The demolition moved quickly, and images of heavy equipment working near the White House complex shocked many Americans. Reports suggest it wasn't just paperwork and arguments, it was physical, loud, and hard to ignore. Dirt, dust, fences, the feel of a historic site being turned into a construction zone. But Trump's team appears to have assumed the next steps would fall into place. That the money would show up, that permits would get signed, that the donor class would come through, that regulators would be pressured into approval. And today's ruling suggests the court believes that assumption may have been a serious mistake, because the main reason the judge allegedly halted construction is brutally simple. The money isn't there. Sources indicate the judge was informed, through a sealed filing or private disclosure, that the promised private funding is not currently available in full. Reports suggest that the original pledges were not guaranteed cash sitting in an account, but commitments that could be pulled back, delayed, or changed depending on conditions. And those conditions changed fast. Analysts point to recent market instability and financial shocks. Reports mention a major disturbance connected to Japan's financial markets that may have shaken wealthy backers, along with broader fears tied to business exposure and political risk. And when it came time to actually deliver real money, not promises, sources suggest key donors went quiet. At least one wealthy backer, reportedly connected to the casino world, is said to have pulled out of a large pledge, pointing to market uncertainty and legal responsibility to business partners or shareholders. And that, according to the logic in the judge's order, changes everything. Because now the court is looking at a torn-up historic site with a half-finished plan and no secured funding to complete it. In other words, a public landmark damaged, based on money that may have been more talk than reality. The ruling, as described by sources, was not gentle. It reportedly stated that the government cannot turn the people's house into an abandoned pit based on phantom funding. It reportedly ordered an immediate stop to all work. But the most stunning part may be what comes next. The judge reportedly gave a deadline, around 30 days, for funding to be secured. And if it isn't? Sources suggest the government may be forced to restore the site. Meaning, fill the hole back in, repair what can be repaired, rebuild the exterior, and end the project as a failure. Think about how humiliating that would be politically. A president who destroyed part of the White House, only to be forced to cover it up with dirt and grass. But the ruling doesn't only focus on money, it also attacks the national security argument, the same argument that reportedly helped the administration move forward in the first place. Because today, reports suggest the judge referenced information from inside the security world that undercuts the White House's public claims. Sources indicate there was a report, possibly from the Secret Service or security officials, raising concerns that the construction itself created new risks. An open pit and a large work zone can expose foundations, create blind spots, and increase vulnerabilities to surveillance or attack. And a huge ballroom with glass features, as described, could be difficult to secure. If those concerns are real, and if the court accepts them, then the story flips in a dangerous way. Instead of the ballroom being needed for security, it becomes a project that may have weakened security. And if that's the case, the judge's view appears to be, you can't use national security as a shield if the project is really about luxury and personal image. That matters legally, because historic protection laws exist for a reason. And if the project is not truly necessary, it becomes much harder to justify the destruction that already happened. Now let's talk about politics, because politics is often about what people see, not what people read in court documents. And what people see right now, according to reports, is devastating for Trump's brand. Trump built his image as a builder, a deal maker, a man who finishes projects, a man who controls the scene. But the scene outside the White House, sources indicate, is the opposite. A muddy crater, still cranes, safety fencing, silent machines, a place that looks unfinished and stuck. And reports suggest the noise had already been bothering staff for months. Backup beeps, drilling, heavy equipment shaking the routine of the West Wing. Now, even that noise has stopped, and the silence makes it feel like the whole plan has collapsed. This creates a nightmare backdrop for every moment of leadership optics. Foreign leaders arriving and driving past the pit. News crews filming with cranes behind them. Official events happening while part of the White House appears broken. Analysts believe this could lock in a powerful message. Trump started something massive, but couldn't finish it. And that message connects to other pressures he's facing too. Because if a leader appears cash-strapped, legally boxed in, and unable to deliver, it becomes a larger story about competence and control. So why did the donors reportedly run? Market fear is one explanation, but sources suggest another factor: the risk of attaching your name to the project. After public controversies and international moments where Trump's reputation took hits, analysts believe some wealthy backers may have decided it was too toxic. No one wants to be the person whose name ends up connected to a legal disaster at the White House. And there's another risk. Politics changes. If Trump does not win future battles, or if a new president takes office later, the ballroom could be canceled or ripped out. So wealthy donors may be looking at this as a terrible investment, millions paid for something that might never exist, or might be removed by the next administration. So the easy move is to disappear, and when donors disappear, the president is left holding the mess. There's also a legal danger for donors, according to the tone of the ruling as described. Because if people promised money in ways that influenced court decisions, especially if any official papers suggested funding was secured, then investigators could start asking questions about honesty, filings, and possible legal exposure. Reports suggest the judge demanded documentation: names, commitments, signatures, proof. And if that proof doesn't match the public story, then this stops being just a construction fight. It becomes a possible investigation into who said what and when and whether anyone misled the court. Politically, Democrats are already moving in. Sources indicate top Democratic voices immediately framed this as a perfect symbol: Trump tearing things down. Institutions, alliances, norms, and now literally tearing down part of the White House itself. And it hits emotionally because the East Wing isn't just office space. It's tied to decades of history, first ladies, visitors, tours, and the living tradition of the presidency. So the argument becomes, he broke something historic for personal luxury and then failed to rebuild it. That combination, destruction plus incompetence, is politically lethal. And reports suggest public reaction is already forming around one simple question: why is this happening now? Why is the White House focused on a luxury ballroom when regular Americans are worried about prices, jobs, rent, and basic costs? Analysts believe that contrast could harden quickly, and if focus groups start repeating that line, "He cares more about parties than my bills," then the damage spreads beyond the building and into Trump's entire leadership story. Even within Trump's own party, sources indicate there is private anger. because Republican lawmakers will now be asked to defend a White House that visually looks like a torn-up project that went wrong, and they may not want to be tied to it. Reports suggest there is already talk of oversight questions. Who approved demolition before funding was locked? What did officials know about the donor situation? Did the administration overpromise? And if hearings start, especially televised hearings, this could become a slow-burn disaster that drags on for weeks, maybe months. So what happens next? The judge reportedly set a timer. Find the money fast or restore the site. Can Trump find $400 million in real cash quickly? Analysts say there are only a few paths, and all of them are ugly. He could try shifting money from other government areas, but the ruling, as described, seems designed to block that without Congress. And with political tensions high, Congress may refuse to help. He could try getting outside help, but if foreign-linked money touches a White House building project, it could trigger a massive scandal and serious legal questions. Even the appearance of that would be explosive, which means the most likely outcome, according to many observers, may be the most humiliating one. A contractor brought in, not to build a ballroom, but to cover the hole. Dirt pushed back in, grass planted, walls repaired, the project erased like it never happened, except everyone will remember it did. And for someone obsessed with legacy, that may be the deepest cut of all, because Trump didn't want to leave behind a temporary policy. He wanted to leave behind something physical, a structure, a monument. Instead, he may leave behind a story about overreach, bad planning, and a judge forcing the government to undo his dream. There's also another layer people aren't talking about enough: labor. Reports suggest many workers on site are union, and when funding becomes uncertain, unions want guarantees. They want to know they will be paid. Sources indicate that as financial shocks hit and donor money reportedly froze, workers began demanding assurances because Trump has long faced public stories about disputes with contractors in past business ventures. If payment couldn't be guaranteed, then workers stepping away would be predictable. And if that happened before the judge even acted, then today's order doesn't just stop construction. It confirms what the workforce had already decided: no money, no work. And that creates a powerful political picture: Trump, the self-described builder, losing the builders. Finally, there's a legal threat hanging over the entire situation now. Because if any part of this plan moved forward based on claims that funding was secured, and if that turns out not to be true, then someone around the project could face serious consequences. Reports suggest the judge wants paperwork fast. Who promised the money? Was it real? Was it guaranteed? Did officials describe it honestly? And that's why this story is bigger than a halted construction site. It's becoming a test of credibility. This week, analysts say, has already been rough for Trump. International tension, financial fears, legal drama. And now it ends with the most visible symbol possible: a damaged White House site, frozen by court order, and watched by the entire world. The question is no longer, will Trump build his ballroom? The question is, what else did the court just uncover, and who is about to get pulled into this next?